welcome.
Hello, everyone, and I hope you're all doing well. My name is Tanner Dagenais, and I'm the host of Self-Sabotage Solutions. I'm so grateful and thankful today to be joined by Paul Leendertse. Um, and he's an author and a pioneer of the root cause of cancer. He has both a book and he has courses, and he's even gotten to the point of teaching other people on how to do the same kind of healing he's been doing with helping people like address the root cause of cancer. And I'm a firm believer that you know his work is extremely powerful and is much needed by the world. So I'm so grateful and thankful to have you on the line today, Paul. Can you please just like introduce yourself a little bit, and we can, like, where are you right now? You're in New Zealand, right?
Yeah, at the moment I'm in New Zealand. I've been traveling around, exploring different parts of the world, so I've been uprooted, and it's a pretty interesting experience for me to just be floating around kind of a thing, but it's really teaching me a lot about the world. It's been a valuable experience.
That's so cool. Is it? How do you like New Zealand? Is like one of your favorite places so far, or?
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, it's like a whole different world here. I don't know how this happened, but whoever has been in charge of this place, at least in the past, has been very conscious.
Mm.
Just even small things are taken care of, like the sidewalks, for example. At least where I am in New Zealand, are wide enough that you can walk beside each other. Like you
Oh
could
wow.
be walking with a person and actually carry it. I come from Ontario, Canada. That's where I grew up, and sidewalks are half the width. So when you're walking, there's no room. Like in Ontario, Canada, recycle bins don't have lids on them. So this has just been for the as long as I can remember. So everyone puts out their recycle boxes. There's no lid on it, so just garbage blows all over the place. There's just garbage like in ditches.
Wow.
And in New Zealand, they have lids. So that's one of the first thing I noticed. Just there's some kind of different level of intelligence or something here. There's really massive trees that aren't cut down, they're protected. The bird population here is just massive. Like
Wow.
every morning I wake up to just a symphony of birds singing. And in Ontario, I've noticed, at least it appears to be true to me at least, that the number of birds have been declining. I don't The last few times I've been in Ontario, I don't really even hear many birds singing.
Mhm.
Like different times of the year it changes, but I've lived there my whole life, so I've noticed a difference. And you know, if you Google Earth Ontario from the top view and just like zoom into the center and just slowly back out, you realize like it's kind of shocking and disturbing what the government has done to the land. They've just completely, totally clear cut almost the entire thing, and it's just a grid of commercial pesticide spraying farms,
Wow.
which completely, totally annihilate like many of the insects, the insect population. I remember when I lived in Ontario, I would always, when the farmers were spraying their fields, I would see bees dropping dead on my front porch.
Wow.
Yeah, dropping down and doing like this little kind of spin in a circle. And so when all the insects are being killed by the pesticides, um, by the way, commercial farmers have one of the highest rates of cancer. But when the insects are being destroyed, then the birds have nothing to eat, so
Hmm.
then they start to disappear. So New Zealand's been a really healing experience for me. It brings me hope. Like, wow, it's possible for the human race to manage nature and manage the land and think consciously. It's really beautiful here. It's like some of the cleanest air in the world.
Wow.
Um, yeah, so it's definitely one of my favorite places in the world. There's other things too. You don't have to legally give your kids away. So in Ontario, you have to give your kids away. You just have no choice. It's the law. You have to give your kids to the government. The government then puts, you go to school and then someone else raises your kids, I mean, most Monday to Friday at least.
Hmm.
In New Zealand, that's an option.
Wow.
So natural learning and like no schooling period is a real thing here. And I've met some really highly intelligent people that somehow, like, I don't know how this has happened, but they got out of the system, 'cause it's not easy to get out of the system, and raise their kids totally naturally. And they're all successful, and I'm interviewing a lady in a few weeks about this. It's like, so I've been blown away by New Zealand, just totally blown away.
That's yeah, that's amazing. That sounds like paradise, and like just from looking from behind you, like it looks like paradise out there. But that's so cool
It's
that you
beautiful.
were like I actually saw that post you were talking about where you were going to interview the unschooling person, right? Is what it
Yep,
was?
yep,
Yeah, that's I'm
deschooling.
super interested in watching that because I have a 10-month-old of my own, and we are planning on doing like a home schooling, unschooling kind of thing too. So
Oh, exciting. Good for
yeah,
you.
so we're
Wow,
super
good for
excited.
you. It's totally leaping into the unknown, right? Like the
Yep.
system just provides this sort of template we're supposed to follow, but like when the template causes a lot of problems in people,
Mhm.
we gotta create a new template, you know? And so, like, one of my students that took my cancer prevention coach training, she was sharing with me that her daughter was depressed and on SSRI drugs and suicidal for 2 years straight. I think maybe longer, but for sure for 2 years was a big problem. And then she found out about natural learning and just the whole concept. Like, wait, maybe it's not natural to force your kids into that kind of an environment where they're forced to learn endless amounts of information. Like, and she took her kid out of school. She took her daughter out of school, and her daughter is completely healed, like
Wow.
totally off the drugs, not suicidal, not depressed, inspired, um, excited for life, free, and now pursuing her desires, and really starting to know herself, like coming to actually know herself. Like, how can you come to know yourself if you're forced to sit in a chair for many hours all day and learn information that maybe you're not ready to learn, or you don't want to learn it, or you're not interested in it at the time? But if you don't learn it, you're threatened, literally threatened, or shamed and guilty. It's like totally not a healthy approach to raising a child. It just isn't. But it's difficult to get out of that world too if you're just born into it, or if your kids are already in school, then it becomes challenging. Like, how do I change this? But this change is occurring. Like, just hearing you say that, like,
Yep.
there's a lot of people that are like, no, we got to change this world, right from the ground up, like right from how children are raised from the day they're born. We got to change all of this. And that's part of actually what ends cancer. That really truly is part of the solution to ending cancer, because one of the reasons I'm so passionate about that topic is because over the many years that I've spent working with people with cancer, because I've been doing this for about 12 years now, it's my number one priority passion, getting to the root cause of cancer with people. That took me into emotional healing, childhood wounding, and trauma, and like ultimately figuring out the root cause of cancer, which is unresolved chronic stress that's carried in the body. That is the cause. Like, it's not even a theory for me anymore. I've worked with so many people, like, so it's difficult to heal that, though. It's an uncomfortable place to go, but if you go there, that's when we can really start healing. So that's how people reverse their cancer. That's why I have testimonials of people reversing their cancer. Because if you get into this stuff, even though it's like scary, challenging, uncomfortable, you can really truly change what needs to change. And a lot of people's traumas come from school. They really do come from school. There's so much. So that's not always what causes cancer, but it's always tied in. So I don't want to give the impression that to heal cancer, you need to go to your childhood and resolve trauma there. That's not necessarily where it's coming from, but it's usually associated, at least.
Right. I mean, I'd have to imagine just like multiple aspects because, like, you know, I mean, I'm sure, as like a holistic lifestyle coach, and, train with Paul Chek, you understand like everything affects the body, right? Body, mind, spirit. Like, it's not just the food, it's not just the trauma, it's not just, this, it's like all aspects of everything kind of affecting you.
Mhm.
Is what I'd have to imagine like the root cause of cancer is like it's like everything. So you have to kind of address a lot of those things, like what food are you eating? What are the like what things are you telling yourself? What is like the your past traumas? Like, are you holding on to some like deep regret or something like that, right?
Yeah, yeah, love
Because
what
yeah,
you
I
said.
mean, all those things really affect you, I feel like.
Absolutely. It's all tied together. It really comes down to like healing
Mhm.
comes down to, and also preventing cancer or any disease is about first choosing to go on like a journey of learning how to love yourself. Um, and what that even means. So like but part of loving yourself is knowing what your needs are. Like we actually have needs. So we need to sleep or else it causes problems. Like our body has to regenerate and recover, and it does that mainly when we're sleeping. When we're awake, we're in a catabolic state, and that's when all of our tissues are being, the resources are being used and there's stress going through our tissues, so we're in a breakdown state. It's when we sleep that we repair. So um, that's a physical thing, sleep. And then there's other physical things too, like our body's built out of what we eat. So if we eat what the government allows to be sold on almost every corner in downtown cities, donuts, like it's legal to just put known chemicals and like disease causing things in food and sell that to the public. Refined sugar is one of them. As soon as you eat refined sugar, it kills the healthy bacteria in your gut lining, just kills it. And you can test it too. You just have 1 tablespoon of refined sugar and then see what happens to your bowel movements and everything, and inflammation in your gut. Well, refined sugar is sold on almost every corner. So why is this? Like, aren't we supposed to be focusing, like as a nation, on creating the most optimal physical, emotional, and mental and spiritual well-being of the nation? Like in the past, if your nation became weak and diseased or tired and and lack of motivation, depressed, another nation just could just come in and maybe kill you, like you got to look after yourself. And so today, somehow, we've just gotten to this reality where the rate of cancer is 1 in 2 people, the rate of heart disease is super high, and so on. So like stroke and diabetes and chronic pain, back pain, joint pain, inflammation. Like, what the hell's going on? So, we need a paradigm shift. And I feel like understanding the root cause of cancer is part of that paradigm shift, because once you really start to understand what causes cancer, it becomes a burden, because then you realize, oh my God, so much has to change. And then there's like a responsibility that comes with it, like, whoa, I have to change my life. I have to change. I should not be saying okay to this stuff in my relationship. I need to be more assertive, or, you know, um, I need to actually start pursuing my dream and not just hold on to this job that, yeah, pays my bills, but makes me depressed or doesn't line up with my heart. Like, I got to change things. But if the world starts changing these things that matter so much, that's when like we heal. And there's no other way. And until then, I just feel like governments and large corporations that, offer things just no like regardless if it's good for people or not, will just keep getting stronger and more powerful. Because one thing I've noticed, for example, is in like my journey in the past, if I was not that I'm perfect today, but I've definitely improved on this. But in the past, especially if I was um, overworking and not spending enough quality time with myself or with my, then it would be difficult for me to spend quality time with anyone else.
Mhm.
And what I would end up doing is cope with that by eating chips or eating chocolate or drinking a coffee or like doing all these things that weren't good for me. And it's really because I sort of needed those things,
Mm.
or else I wouldn't feel okay. So here's self-sabotage, right? Just sabotaging myself. But really the deeper reasons is because I need to change my work habits and my focus in life so that I am not so exhausted and I haven't given myself away so much. And then naturally I don't have the desire to eat 2 bags of chips or something, which then end up causing me inflammation, pain in my back, a parasite infection or a fungal infection or my skin breaking out or whatever it is. So um that's what spirituality really is about in my definition. Like spirituality and how I explain it, it's about taking responsibility for yourself and making making your health a priority and your happiness a priority, and figuring out how to actually make that happen. Like if you just go into the system, it probably won't happen because the system isn't designed from a place of love and consciousness. Like the system's designed basically, like probably the priority of the system is about the economy. And so
Yeah.
that's why we have governments causing pollution or allowing it, not really taking seriously clear cutting of forests. Like there's protests in like British Columbia because lumber companies are just cutting down the most ancient, beautiful, biggest trees on the
Mhm.
planet, but we got to like keep feeding the population. Well, maybe we should focus on quality, not quantity, you know?
Yeah, especially because I think I heard like most grocery stores usually end up like throwing out a bunch of the food anyways. So it's like, I mean, if you're even buying from grocery stores, right? Like there's so much food waste already. Like, how about we actually focus on distributing that food to people who actually need it? Um, if instead of like overproducing, because but I
Yeah.
totally agree. Like the quality thing is so important because like I feel like a lot of people miss that point, right? Like, why are you eating in the first place? You're not just eating for pleasure. Like it's not a pleasure. Like you can get good pleasure from eating good healthy food, but a lot of people just kind of go to the fact of like, oh, I just want the sodas, I want the chips and the things like that. And I
Uh-huh.
mean, we've also been kind of programmed to do that, um, just from society,
Right.
right?
That's a really good point. It's like one of the main reasons we should be eating, like here's a concept, right? We eat to bring life force into us
Mhm.
so that we're alive. And the more life force we have, the more we can actually serve humanity in whatever our special way is. The more life force we have, the more we can build our actual dream. But oftentimes people are not serving humanity in a way that's in alignment with their soul. They're not living their actual dream. And so then they don't eat to bring in life force to support their dream. They eat to feel better about their life. And so
Mhm.
then you're attracted to refined sugar, alcohol. Like alcohol is just a normal thing. Alcohol is a really dark substance, actually. It's like when I was a kid, of course, I drank alcohol. It's just normal, um, for most people at least. And when I stopped drinking alcohol, it changed my whole life for the better. But I had to let go of friends and stuff because now I don't resonate with those people anymore. It's like, well, what are we going to do if we're not going to drink alcohol? How are we going to have fun? One of the things I've learned is that when you get out of all that darkness, um, there's the quality of life is way higher when it's actually in alignment with, I don't know how it used to be. I don't think this is like a new discovery, but dancing, I don't mean going out and learning dancing. I mean just dancing with your soul. Like going to an ecstatic dance is a very healing experience, usually a nourishing experience. Being playful, like making some music just with a drum or with a flute or with a rattle, not something you have to spend hours and hours to learn how to even use as a skill, but just simple stuff like a rattle. This is not taught in school, right? So we're not, our ability to play and have fun actually from things that are free and truly create like a nourishing deep experience in the soul that's hard to put into words, a lot of that's just lost because of the school system. The school
Mhm.
system just teaches us what matters is productivity, right? Like what matters is work, learning, like the mind, information, proving yourself, competing. Like how do you pair up to your other classmates? Are you better or worse? Like,
Mm-hmm.
oh my God, whoa, what? Like what maybe I just don't have an interest in this subject. So someone else gets an A because maybe they are interested. I'm not interested, so I get a C. So now my self-worth is diminished. Then I get a punishment maybe from my parents or something. Like, it's unreal. And so real play is not even competitive. Like, the concept of play in society is like, can I beat the other person? Can I make them a loser? Can I be the winner? Like, I don't want to be the loser, that's for sure, because that feels like shit. So I'm going to try to be the winner. But like, there was a time in my life where I realized, hold on a sec, like, I had to be the winner when I was younger. Like, I always win. And everything. I used to play chess, and I just like put my whole life into that game. Like, I have to beat this person. And I remember one time I was pretty good at chess, and I had this girlfriend I was with that we were like pretty good relationship, pretty strong relationship. We were together for about 4 years, and I met her brother, and he was a chess champion. This is like the first time, the first time I'm meeting this her brother, so it's kind of like a big deal. Like, I want to be respectful, and so we have dinner at his place and his wife's place, and he's got trophies in the house for winning at chess. So he was the champion all through like high school. And so he said, "Do you want?" And he had this amazing chess game, and he said, "Do you want to play?" And the ego in me was like, back then, was like, I gotta beat him. I gotta beat him. So I played this game, and like, long story short, I checkmated him. And I'm like, "Oh, I think that's checkmate." And I was just so proud, like, "Oh, yes, amazing for me." I'm like, now my girlfriend's impressed and so on. And then I looked into his eyes, and it just the energy of everything, just the depth of what just actually happened hit me in that moment, and I realized I just destroyed him.
Oh
Like, I
wow.
I just destroyed his pride. I really just caused a lot of, and he just stood up and walked away. Like, and then I'm like, what am I even doing? And this is one of the things school teaches. Win. Make other people losers, you know, so you can be the winner. And this like overflows into our social status in society. It's like all about social status. And then we have relationships getting started that really aren't coming from the right place. So it's like, if someone's like got high social status or something, then you start a relationship with them. But do they eat organic food? Are they honest? Do they admit when they're wrong and actually forgive you, or forgive themselves? And do they say sorry? Do they grow spiritually? Are they capable of changing when change is needed? Do they face their fears? Do they blame you for things? Like, there's so much to know about a person, but in our society, oftentimes after school, we are not equipped for life. We just don't, and what we were taught is kind of dysfunctional. So then we go out into the world, where we hit the real world, which is where there's real fears, there's real responsibilities to have. There is the whole realm of sex. Like, oh my God, sex is a powerful thing. And then there's love, and there's emotions, and like, what is the actual meaning of life? Because we definitely weren't living a meaningful life in school. So what's the meaning of life?
Mm-hmm.
And then when people get into the real world, they end up developing cancer often. And it is because of these deeper things I'm talking about, because the cause of cancer is unresolved chronic stress. Because when people go out into the real world and they are not equipped for life because they were never taught life skills, they hit life, and life can destroy them if they do not know how to process their emotions, if they do not know how to engage, like, turn it into a challenge, learn from it, grow through it. If they're not able to set aside their ego, like in that experience I had with the chess, I certainly didn't set aside my ego at first. I'm like, I gotta win. But then this special moment came where, because of the details, I really did surrender my ego. And from that day forward, I don't care about competing anymore. I just don't like to do it. I don't enjoy it. I can still play games sometimes. It's not like I don't ever compete in any way, but I kind of don't really anymore. Now I dance, I sing, I play instruments, I do art and listen to beautiful music, and I can do that with other people too. It's a
Awesome.
completely different experience. No, and it's not stressful, and it's like there's nothing to win or lose, and it's so nourishing and healing. So, um, yeah, a lot needs to change. So if a person has cancer, they absolutely need to go inwards and figure out, like, how did my life and myself, my subconscious, like my unconscious, like how was this created? Then you got to be willing to love yourself and realize that you're coming into a world where the rate of cancer is 1 in 2 people. So if that kind of society is the society that raises you as a child, and that's not a healed society, then there's a good chance you're going to be prone to developing cancer because you're raised by a society that develops cancer already. So cancer is a spiritual thing. To heal, it's not about juicing or anything like that. That's important because we need nutrition. We got to eat healthy, but it's deeper. It's emotional, and it's actually truly spiritual. It's a spiritual thing.
Well, yeah, and it makes me, I mean, that's such powerful information about like just like healing like a emotional and like spiritual level. Um, I know I've heard you share like why you had started looking into the root cause of cancer, right? Um, what for the listeners, like what got you to this point where you were like, I have to find out what the root cause of cancer is? Like
Oh,
what got you there?
yeah, good question. Well, my years ago in 2008, I was a holistic lifestyle coach, super healthy, really fit, doing well. And my stepfather developed lung cancer,
Mhm.
and my best friend's father also developed lung cancer, just 4 months apart from each other, 3 or 4 months apart from each other. And I thought I knew everything about health. So like I had my stepfather, we had him going to a naturopath. We had him so he used a combination of things. First he tried to do natural things immediately, and that wasn't working. So then he did radiation, and that didn't work either. But and then ultimately he ended up having surgery, and then ultimately he died. And he listened to me though back then in 2008, and he did all the lifestyle stuff. He started eating organic food. He started juicing wheatgrass. He started like eating raw foods, and he did like vitamin C therapies and things like this. Yet it didn't work. And my and I was just dumbfounded because I thought I know what you have to do to be healthy. And back then I already believed in the body's ability to heal. I already believed that. So I was so confident, but then he died. So it was a shattering experience. But something special happened. Then when I started to think about what had gone down, is his ex-wife, that who he had a really challenging relationship with, had died recently. And then she went, or sorry, he went to her funeral and was hoping that he would reconnect to his children, because in their divorce there was a big separation of the family, and it created a um a problem between him and his kids. So when he went to that funeral, his son met him at the door and said, "You are not welcome here."
Wow.
And this was and then my stepfather died of lung cancer. I think he died within 3 months of that. And it was very clear that that was related to his cancer, because he went downhill fast from that moment. And then I kind of realized, my stepfather's never cried. He just never showed his emotions. So this launched me into exploring my own theory. what if stress causes cancer?
Mm.
You know, what if it's related to our emotions? And so, long story short, that led me to writing my book in 2010 called The Root Cause of Cancer. And I did a bunch of research for like 2 years. I interviewed people. Interviewed a woman who reversed her breast cancer. And how she did that is I interviewed her for like a couple hours and asked deep questions, right? Like usually people aren't even asked these questions. Like if you work with an oncologist, they don't ask you about the types of stresses in your life. They're not even trained to know how to even help you if you do have stress. So,
Mm.
anyways, I started asking these big questions to people, and I've done that for the last 15 years. So, what I've learned is pretty important for really understanding the root cause of cancer. Anyways, this woman, she was having stress in her relationship, and she had breast cancer. So what she did is she ended the relationship. That doesn't mean I'm not giving this example to say that that's the solution all the time. Just in this
Right.
case, she ended the relationship, and she was in Canada, in Ontario, where I grew up. She went to British Columbia for a month, and while she was in British Columbia, she walked in the forest with the ancient trees, which our government's cutting down,
Wow.
and um, she surfed every day. She started a new hobby, and she was free. And she said she cried and cried so much, like all this emotional stuff was coming up for her. It's a pretty big deal to just go and be alone like that. Like a lot of people, that scares the shit right out of people. It's difficult to do that. Like it's a
Mhm.
life-changing, but somehow she did it. So after that month when she came back, she had another follow-up test scheduled to now decide, okay, what kind of treatment protocol, what kind of dosage, and her cancer's just gone.
Wow.
It's just completely gone. And so you know what her doctor told her? Ah, well, we must have made a mistake. There was no lump. She's like, well, what about this scan? Like, that shows the lump. It's just, it's a mistake
Mhm.
because the war on cancer is so old. It's like 100 years old. It's so ingrained in mainstream humanity, and so much of society is built around this concept of cancer is a treatable disease. Cancer is this treatable disease. Joe Biden, the president of the States, recently declared this like moonshot goal thing, and he says, we want cancer to become a treatable disease. Like, wait a second, don't we want cancer to end?
Yep.
There's a big difference. Like, what
Mhm.
exactly do you mean? And I was just doing a session with a client. She has ovarian cancer, and we're getting to the root of it. I can get to the root of it now in one session. Like I teach this
Wow.
in my training too, in my advanced training. Um, but she had already tried to heal by going to this clinic in the States, and the clinic, it's a 3-month healing retreat kind of thing, and it cost $75,000. So she went there, and after the 3 months, her cancer's gone. 75,000, it's gone.
Mhm.
Like, okay, well, hey, if it's gone, I guess then you probably pay almost anything.
Yep.
4 months later, her cancer's back.
Mhm.
And what she's learning with me now is that the root cause wasn't addressed. And one of the reasons the reason it came back is because when she came back to her life, where all the stress is and the unresolved things in her relationship, just recreated her cancer. So the other interesting thing is she was there for 3 months. And so she got to know other people doing the same treatments. And there was 4 other people she got to know, and all 4 of them were cancer free at the end of the 3 months too. And now she's kept in touch with them because this is kind of like 3 months, and going through that kind of journey together kind of creates a bond. Every single one of them has cancer again.
Wow.
And this is what happens with chemotherapy and radiation that people don't typically talk about, because stories are put on the news, and I'm cancer free. I'm a cancer survivor. And I was like, great, of course. But what unfortunately happens is cancer oftentimes comes back, and it will come back if their actual root cause wasn't addressed. And of course, a treatment does not address the root cause. So even if it's an alternative thing, it doesn't really work. You have to get down to the root of it. And yeah, so all these people have cancer again. So what is the goal then of, like, what is our goal? Do we want to create a treatable disease where we have cancer, but luckily we can do like 50 rounds of chemotherapy 3 different times over the course of 5 years, and then yeah, we die because we never actually got rid of the disease, but at least we treated it? Or do we want to end cancer? So to end cancer, we need this paradigm shift of understanding the root cause and doing something about that. And the more that's understood, I have like 75 coaches now around the world.
Awesome.
It's really cool. I'm doing today was the first day of my cancer prevention coach training this time around. And today was day one. And today there's someone from South Africa. There's a nurse, another nurse. And she shares right in front of the whole class that she just had to stop being a nurse, but because she just can't accept it anymore. She said she sees people come in, they're generally okay, they have cancer, they start chemotherapy treatments, and like 7 months later, they die. And she just can't do it anymore. She just can't. So now she's taking my training so she can learn how to help people heal themselves. Because that's the other thing, you can only heal yourself. So this whole concept of go find a cure is also a dangerous belief system. You cannot find a cure. Like, you have to fulfill your needs. You're a human being. So if you're lacking sleep, the cure is to get the sleep you need. If you're lacking happiness, the cure is to find what makes you happy. You see, like, there's no like outside cure for that. Like, there's temporary stuff, right? Like, you can drink alcohol. Oh my God, I am happy after all. I'm drunk, right? Or I can do like a line of Coke or something. Like, the amount of cocaine addictions is off the chart because the life of human beings today has lost so much meaning and has also lost so much freedom and lost so much independence that we can only survive that kind of life by suppressing emotions, by just getting stuck like in relationship challenges and life challenges, not knowing what the hell to do about it. So cancer is truly a spiritual thing. It's about change for the better, for real. So it really requires a lot of courage, and you got to go outside the box, of course. But the majority of people that work with me are people that have already tried treatments, and it's always the same story. It's like, I have a rare form of cancer. I was told by my doctor I have a rare form of cancer. It's so common. Like, okay, another one. It's all the same. And then but if I did the treatments, the chances of healing are like 80%. Then they do the treatments, their cancer's gone. 2 months later, their cancer's back. It's spread throughout the body. Now that I should do the treatments again, and the chances of healing are 20%. And when that moment hits, usually people are like, no more. Like, no, like, I can't do this anymore. And that's when they turn in to themselves. Like, now something really, really spiritually important happens. They realize they got to take this into their own hands. If they just give it to put it in the hands of someone else, this is what happens. You got to put it into your own hands. Now, the problem is, if you put it into your own hands, what do you do? Because the school system didn't teach you you anything of real value. Like, the school didn't, like, you didn't learn how to play, how to love yourself, what your needs even are. In the school system, there's vending machines set up everywhere, and cafeterias feed people hot dogs that have chicken feces in them and are raised by created by factory farmed animals that literally many times when they're slaughtered, they already have cancer themselves or a disease. And they're just ground up into food. So then people enter into this alternative realm of like, what the hell should I do? And it's a big journey. So there's a lot to know then, like that you have to learn about what you need to do to heal yourself. So anyways, that's why I have my training. That's why I have cancer prevention coach level 1 and cancer reversal coach level 2, because I teach I have a 15-step emotional healing process, because I've learned over the years how to deal with anger, how to process and resolve anger, how to process and resolve guilt, how to deal with fears, how to deal with grief, how to um, basically just deal with all of it, because I've worked with so many different people with cancer. So if you really want to change the world of cancer, you got to learn about the mental, emotional, and spiritual realms. And it's not about thinking positive. There's this huge thing out there, like you can just heal yourself with your mind. So there's benefit and value in that, because of course if you're thinking negatively, then that's gonna actually that can destroy you if you're just
Right.
thinking negatively. But there's something important that I teach. It's really important that you first acknowledge what's real. So what is actually the sources of stress? What is harming you? What's actually really going on? You got to look into the dark stuff and be courageous enough to face that, so you understand it and see it for what it is, and then you develop a plan and think positive. But many times people are trying to heal by just thinking positively, but not changing their life, and then
Mhm.
they die. So it's a really important thing to understand. And also there's this concept, like if you just keep imagining yourself healed in the future, like this powerful meditation focus is out there too. Just keep imagining yourself healed, imagine. No, you have to change your life. So yes, imagine yourself healed and know that now that's possible. Now change your life and go create the healed version of yourself,
Yeah.
right? So the average human has become disempowered today. The average human, their energy is all outside of themselves, like keeping the peace, pleasing other people, um, just trying to survive. We're not meant for that. Like, we're designed to thrive. Human beings are, we all have a soul, we all have a purpose for being here. We got to find out what that is, but it's there. It's like a rule, it's a spiritual law. Every single person has a soul with a gift inside there, that's first a gift to ourselves, and then it's a gift to humanity when we actually like express it and energize it.
Yeah. I completely agree with that. You have to acknowledge like the negative things in your life. Like you can't just beat it out with positivity. Like we can't be like, oh, I'm thinking positively. I'm just going to visualize myself doing this and then not do anything different, right? You can't just keep taking the same actions over and over and expect, something different to happen, right? Like while those are powerful tools, you gotta pair them with action and like actually change. Because I mean, you got to this point in your life because you took certain actions to get there,
Right.
right? And if you
Yeah.
don't, if you keep taking those same actions, like that's like when I heard like there's other people who got cancer again because they went back into their same life where they were taking the same actions, living the
Mm.
same life with that same stress, right? Like they never actually addressed the root cause, like you were talking about, and that makes total sense to me. Um, and I think that's so important to acknowledge is that you need to make those changes. And first part is being aware of like those negative things in your life and like, okay, well, how did I get here? What things have I been neglecting with my health, with my just emotions in general? And I feel
Hmm.
like a lot of society, it does push you down from addressing your emotions, right? Especially for like, I know like a lot of men, like if you see as yourself like crying or something, then like you're like a weak, you're not like someone who can be like a manly man or whatever. Um,
Right.
and I used to
Yeah.
always repress my emotions. I just like find myself like randomly crying during movies. I'm like, why am I crying right now? I have no idea. I was repressing it so much. I just was like urging to come out, right? Um, so I
Mm.
totally understand like that would be like super powerful to like actually face those emotions, to address like the root cause. And when I think of like the medical system, like, and I just want to touch on this point because like I know you talked about it. Like the medical system, that's the way it's built, right? It doesn't address the root cause of anything.
Hmm.
right? It just, here's a pill, here's an injection, here's some magical cure-all thing that really doesn't affect the root cause. So you're going to end up having that again, even if like the symptoms go away temporarily.
Yep.
It's just going to sit there and fester and get worse and worse because you're not changing anything. It's just going to keep building up to the point where the universe is like, hey, it's time to change, and give you a big old kick in the butt. And if you don't make that change, then you're gonna it's not gonna be, it's not gonna be pretty, right? Um, but I
That's a
want to
good
address
point.
one thing, because I think for a lot of people, they believe that the root cause of cancer, or sorry, not that like the cause of cancer is because their genes. And I'm actually reading a book right
Oh,
now by Bruce Lipton called The Biology of Belief, where he talks about like, epigenetics, and how it's, you know, it's a lot of actually your environment, and it's actually like your beliefs and like things like that that actually influence like your cells and your
uh-huh.
gene patterns. Um, do you subscribe at all to like your parents had cancer, so now you're a victim of it, right? It's kind of like the victim mindset we were talking about before.
Yeah.
You know, I totally disagree. Like, no one is a victim of their life unless they allow themselves to be.
Yeah.
But what's your opinion on it?
Thanks. That's a really good question. Um, and it's a common thing that is taught too, like in medical schools and all of this stuff. And yeah, it's completely disempowering because if it's just your genes, well, I guess you're just screwed then, eh?
Yeah.
You really truly are a victim. You might as well just lay down and die because if it's your genes, the only thing you can do now is get the treatments, which don't work because they don't address the root cause. So,
Mm-hmm.
well, in my first book, I have research referenced in there where they've taken twins that got separated at birth, and one twin is left with the biological parents and the other twin gets raised by an adopted family. And they've this isn't just with one set of twins, but they've tracked twins like this to see what's going on. And the the chances of developing cancer mirror that of the family that they grew up in. So the biological parents can have like a higher no cancer in their family, and then the child that they raise doesn't have cancer. But then the child that got adopted by a different family develops cancer, and in that family, cancer runs in the family. So what's really going on is that we learn from our parents. So if our parents never taught us how to process our emotions, or they taught us the incorrect way to process our emotions by like what you just said, don't cry, suck it up, be a big boy, then that gets passed on in families. So it's behavior patterns, it's belief systems, it's how we process our emotions, it's judgments. Um, how did we learn to love ourselves? This is what's actually passed on in families. And so if you develop cancer and cancer runs in the family, your job spiritually is to break that cycle. It's to learn how to love yourself, how to fulfill your needs. It's to break the pattern that's running in the family. That's your job, spiritually speaking. And that's your cure. It's to break that. But yeah, if you just think, oh shoot, I'm a victim too. I feel so yeah, it's tragic. I mean, it is. Like if your mother died of breast cancer, your grandmother died of breast cancer, that is tragic. But the tragedy just doesn't end until somebody figures out how to stop this, right? And it's just not going to stop with a war on cancer with these treatments. So another thing that I share, this is what one of the small things I teach. This is just a small thing in my training, but this is one thing I share with my students. I'll just share here now is we all have the genes in us to develop a tan, but we don't develop a tan unless we're in the sun.
Yeah.
So it's the stress of the sun that activates the gene. So if you have a tan one day and you realize, oh my God, I don't want a tan, then you got to get to the root cause, right?
Mm-hmm.
And some person's going to be out there selling like some kind of a lotion to make your skin lighter. Like, this is the solution. Just pay me $100 a bottle. You just put this on every day. Just keep going out in the sun, and then I'll sell you this lotion. And $75,000 later, you'll be so white that no one will know you have a tan. But no, it's like wild if you actually know, if you know what the root cause is. And that's the thing, many times people have no idea. They really do think it's genes, or they really do think it's because they smoked like 20 years ago or whatever. Then they just can't, like, their chance of actually addressing and doing the things they need to do to change their life goes way down. Yeah, so if you get out of the sun, your tan just goes away. And that's what happens with tumors. One of the first people that's on my podcast, his name's Phil. He's an example of reversing cancer, and he's in my course, and he reversed his testicular cancer with no treatments. It disappeared when he addressed the root cause. 3 weeks later, his cancer's gone. And that's how it works. It usually takes days to a month, like a few days to a month, because every situation is different. Now, to address the root cause, you got to change massive things. It's not easy to do that. It's not just like easy. The easy thing to do is to take a new supplement. It's hard to go through the suffering and the trauma and the damage of chemotherapy. That's definitely hard, but it's still, spiritually speaking, easy because you still haven't changed your life. So yeah, you go through hell, and if you somehow make your way through that, then there's some, you should be proud that you had the willpower to pull yourself through that battle. But the real battle is spiritual. It's about loving yourself and figuring out, how the hell did this happen? Many of our grandparents were either murdered or severely damaged psychologically, emotionally in war. Like, just in the last 100 years, we had World War I and II, World War I and II, where humans all over the world are killing each other. And so if you could just imagine, what the hell did that do to the fulfillment of everyone's needs? Like, were our needs really fulfilled? Were we able to play, like, were our parents and our grandparents able to play and be free and like have a good life? No. So then what happens is those traumas get passed on into families. So people that are developing cancer today, it's actually caused by psycho-emotional unresolved stress. And it's actually connected in deep ways generations back, related to war. So it's difficult, but to heal, you got to take responsibility for yourself. And what I teach in level 1 training is how to prevent cancer. So that's the thing that's super important too. It's just as important, because preventing a cancer and reversing it is almost the same. It's harder to reverse cancer than it is to prevent it, but we have to actually learn how to process emotions and how to grow through challenges in life so that we don't develop cancer. That's the real way to end cancer. But it's just not going to be taught in school, and it's not taught really in many places around the world. It's certainly not taught by the government.
It's amazing that you went, like, you pioneered this, and you, like, I know you had that experience that like was like, this is my calling now. But it's so awesome that you did, like, start asking those questions of people and, like, looking into this, because the war on cancer, right, has been going on for so long, and it's amazing that no one's really put this together. And I'm maybe other people have, and just wasn't, like, it was silenced or something. But the fact that you've been able to put this together is just really amazing.
Thank
And
you.
a question here. So I understand, like, the emotional trauma and stress. Um, I understand there's also good forms of stress, right? So it's not all stress. There are some
Right.
good forms of stress, like working out and going out in the sun and things like that, right? So it's really like the stress of, like, living a life that you don't like anymore, or that or like working a job that really you just dislike, or being around someone who's just like, it's like a toxic relationship, or not really addressing the reason why you maybe had, like, a really bad experience back in the day, and you never forgave yourself for it, or, like, you were the cause of, like, your siblings, like, death or something, right? Like,
Yeah.
all these things, and then, like, you never actually address it. Those are the
Right.
real things
Yeah.
you're talking about, right?
Yeah. Stress doesn't cause cancer. It's unresolved chronic stress. So it's normal in a relationship, for example, to have challenges and to get into like fights
Right.
and even get stressed with each other and pissed off and whatever. That's normal. Like, there's no way to avoid that, because relationships, like committed relationships, are truly spiritual and sacred because um the longer you go together in commitment, the more you start to merge all layers of your energy fields, and then you eventually run into each other's subconscious. You run into each other's inappropriate behaviors, unlearned appropriate behaviors like that you haven't yet learned, and you run into each other's like quote dysfunctions, shadows. And so then the commitment is to like learn about those things and learn about where that's coming from and change it. And that takes a lot of work and time, but
Mhm.
that is the challenge of a relationship. So it's normal to get into fights. But the problem is if you don't, and most people don't know how, if you don't know how to resolve these things and grow together, because you're never taught a healthy relationship from school, right?
Mhm.
I'll get to that in a second because it's important. Like the teacher-student relationship is not a healthy relationship. It's an authority who has a position of power that gets to decide how you should feel, what you should want,
Hmm.
you know? And if
Yep.
you want to speak up and be like, wait a second, I kind of want to just go out and play, like, you can't. But I want to. I said you can't. So this is not a healthy relationship. So this is what we're taught from a very young age. It's ingrained into our subconscious. So then later when we're in loving relationships, we tend to just our subconscious comes up in stressful scenarios and we act towards each other in power struggles. And what we're supposed, because that's what we learned as a kid, that's what the school system is. It's a big power struggle where every single kid loses. And so you don't want to lose later. Or you just learn to be a victim to keep the peace, you know, like because if you just obey the parents and the kid and the teachers in school, then you don't get punished, then your love isn't removed, then you feel safe. So school turns people into rebels or into pleasers and all kinds of stuff. So yeah, so the point is that stress does not cause cancer, it's unresolved stuff. So if real challenges arise in a relationship, and then with the best efforts of the partners through the fighting and the challenge of it, it doesn't change. And then instead of finishing the resolution of that, people cope somehow. That is what leads to cancer.
The
And people do
unresolved.
this because they're afraid. People do this because they love their partner or because they don't want to, they don't know what else to do. So they just cope. Yeah.
Yeah, I that makes total sense that, and you're right, we're not taught it in school, right? We're taught to do something for like from the whole day, like we're taught to leave our loved ones, right? We're taught to leave our loved ones and go to school all day
Yeah.
to learn something that we may not want to learn. If you give the answer that may be right, but it's not the way they want the answer, it's wrong.
Uh-huh.
Like it's definitely a very backward system. And then we go into this, like I think it's pretty much is almost like a breeding ground for like teaching people how to work 9 to 5 jobs in
Yeah.
jobs that they dislike, right? That's why so many people are working in jobs they dislike because it's the same experience that they had in school. They worked,
Exactly.
they went to school from 9 to 5 and they didn't like it. And then they went to a job they didn't like from 9 to 5, and it's like the same thing.
Yeah. And to break out of that cycle is difficult because you have to start going into the spiritual realm of life, and that's not taught. It's completely removed from the school system. Like spirituality itself is not, I don't even know if that word is uttered in the whole 15 to 20 year length of time of school. And religion is not spirituality. Like I just had I'm recently I've been working with a young girl and she has been slowly getting worse with brain cancer and has had multiple seizures, and she's having a really dangerous experience where like we'll see if we can turn this around because but it's intense. For sure she would have died if she didn't start working with me, but and now she's making changes, but what she's been doing since before working with me is reading the Bible every day and going to church and spending time with her family where they're all praying for her, yet she's dying. And this is a very common experience. Um, so spirituality does not mean going to church. God is not in the church. God's
Mhm.
not in the church and God's not in the Bible. God is actually in our heart. Like our connection to God is through our soul. So when a child says, I have this desire that's coming from within me to go climb a tree today and play outside, that's coming from God. That's coming from their soul. Now an authority steps in and says, you're not allowed. You have to come indoors and sit in this chair and look at me and listen to me for the next hour and a half so I can tell you what you should have an interest in, and you have to memorize that and repeat it back to me a week later. And if you do it well, you'll be rewarded with an A. And if you don't, I will punish you with a C, D, or E. And this is such a massive disconnection from God that then later people think they're connecting to God by going and reading the Bible. It's like there's wisdom in the Bible, by the way. There's some really deep stuff in there, but most priests and ministers don't even know what they're talking about when they read it. Most people, when they read the Bible, they don't know what it actually means. I've had to do research into this deeply and really study this from a personal responsibility place, like in my own life and with all my clients, because the number of people that have cancer that I've worked with who are Catholic or vegetarian are the highest. Those are the two highest percentages of people with cancer, religious and vegetarian. So
Question for that, because I just had this thought pop in my head for that. So for the Catholics, is it because do you think the correlation is because they were born sinners and they every time they do something bad they have like this fear that they're a sinner now? And I'm sure there's probably more of it, but like I have to imagine that's part of it, right?
mm, that's a really good question, and that's part of it. The biggest thing is that the concept that God is something outside of us
Mm-hmm.
that we connect to through someone else, right? So you connect to God through the Bible, or you connect to God through your priest or minister.
Mm-hmm.
That's the problem. Because what that does is it creates a subconscious program, a sabotaging subconscious program, where when you have a problem in your body, like if you have a symptom, you go to the outside immediately for the solution, because the most powerful source of life and everything apparently is God, which is outside of you. So it creates psychologically going to the outside all the time. And it's interesting, like for solutions and to get our needs met. So if you want food, ask your mom to cook you a meal, but don't learn how to cook it yourself. If you want safety, marry someone that makes money so that you're safe financially. If you want love, um, hang out with some person that tells you you're beautiful all the time, but then cheats on you when you're not looking. Like you got to go inwards and find God actually inside you, because that's where God is. Um, so then the part about sinners is important too, because that creates a lot of confusion. I have a spiritual laws course, by the way. It's one I just recently created because this stuff, like I could talk to you about this. My spiritual laws course is 5 hours long.
Wow.
It's recorded. And I explain God very deeply. God with a capital G-O-D, God with just a capital G and a small O-D, and God with a small G-O-D. I explain the devil, heaven, and hell. I go into this really deeply because it's one of the most important things to understand. And for a lot of people, it's been life-changing. So this concept of sin, and by the way, I've learned all this because of all the people that tried to, like, that were dedicated to healing themselves, that first tried chemotherapy and all this other stuff didn't work. So then they started trying to heal themselves and they ended up finding me. So I've been blessed to learn together with hundreds and hundreds of people with cancer. So that's where all this comes from. It's not like I'm some kind of a genius or something. It's just simply because I went and was exposed to this. But even an oncologist isn't exposed to this because they're just trained to sit, like, put people through a machine and be like, oh yeah, you have a tumor right there, so this is the treatment, and see you later. Like what's actually being learned? Not much, you know. So So yeah, so I've really learned a lot about spirituality and God and everything because of this, because the number of people praying to God and then dying, and then afterwards people say, so before a person dies, people say God's going to be, you got to believe in God, Jesus will save you, all this stuff. Then they die, then afterwards they switch their explanation. They say, oh, God must have decided it was your time. Then why pray to begin with? If God's just going to decide anyways, then just forget the whole thing about prayer. But people don't, but this is the hard part of real spirituality, is to be able to set your ego aside and learn new things and change. So the concept of sin, sorry for all the tangents here.
Very good.
The concept of sin is so dangerous and confusing because the reality of life is that we're, like, the actual reality of life is that we are all imperfect beings. So for sure, we will all make mistakes. We will all do things wrong. We might even do bad things, like steal the cookie out of the cookie jar or something, because we're here to learn and grow. So in that sense, the real understanding of sin, this is one of the things I explained in my spiritual laws course, we are all sinners. But I'm not talking about the sinner concept of religion. I just explained what it really means. But like what I said, many even priests and ministers they don't understand what the Bible means. Not all of them, maybe some understand, but a lot don't. And a lot of people don't. So instead, what people think a sin is if you don't go to church, now you're a sinner. So you just got to make sure you go to church, and now you're okay, for example. But what I'm saying is, you're a sinner because you might not be honest sometimes. Because actually taking responsibility for what you did wrong and owning it can be difficult, and then apologizing to the person. So we're all sinners because we'll do these imperfect things, but real spirituality is to take responsibility for ourselves and learn and change and learn how to be honest and learn how to forgive and learn how to apologize and learn how to do things differently. But the concept of many religions is like, you know what? Heaven is the thing that matters above all. So you can destroy the whole entire planet. You can lie and cheat and make money, even if it pollutes the planet. You can just do whatever you want almost. As long as you go to church, then you'll go to heaven. This is really dangerous stuff. And it's interesting. There's a documentary called, I think it's called Borneo. And sometime recently in history, like just 10 years ago, maybe, or like it wasn't that long ago, the government went into the country Borneo. I think that's a country. And they stole it, just like they did to North America. The Europeans just kind of just take the land. And then they start decimating it, like clear cutting it, polluting it, doing whatever they want, taking all the resources, overpopulating it, just total irresponsibility. And so what they just did is they went to Borneo, and once they've taken over the tribes and the tribes have submitted, then you know what the first things they do is? They build a church and a school so that all the children start learning who the authorities are. They start learning who God is. God's outside of them, found in the church. And they start learning who knows the information out there. That's the teacher. It's interesting, like when kids leave their parents and are put into school, something subtle happens. They start to believe that the teacher knows more than their parents. Because that's the indirect message. That's the indirect message the parents are teaching their kids. Like, we don't have this information. Like, we don't have this knowledge. You have to go here. They have the knowledge. But they don't. They don't have any of the knowledge for life. It's not part of the curriculum. And I don't know how many people today have gone to university and afterwards not used their degree or college. There, your hands up. Me too. Because we're not following our soul. We're just following the authorities. So, this woman that'll be on my podcast in the future, you saw me post about her. Her name's Jane Evans. She raised her kids with natural learning, which means let your kids grow up naturally. They don't have to be put into a freaking prison. They will learn. I spoke to one woman a couple of years ago, and she raised her kid with natural learning, and her child did not learn how to read until at 10 years old. Her child still did not know how to read.
Wow.
And she's just like, no, I trust my daughter. She's just going to learn how to read when it's time for her to read. If she wants to read, she'll learn how to read. And at 10 years old, her daughter just developed this passion, like burning passion to learn the piano. No one told her she had to. Her mom's like, not like, you have to learn the piano or you should learn it. No, her daughter just like heard some classical music or something and was like, just fell in love with it. And then realized, like, how's that sound being created? Oh, that's from a piano. Really? And so she goes and does her own research, looks up pianos, like, I want to learn how to do that. Okay, cool. Do you see how alive she is?
Yeah.
This is life, like following your own desire. So then her mom says, okay, I support you. You know, if you want to learn to play piano, I support you. That's the job of a parent. It's to support the soul desires of your child and protect them if they're naive about certain things. Like sometimes you got to just control your kid. Like if your child is going to run across the street, like just having a great old time, but doesn't understand yet that there's danger, like traffic,
Mhm.
then you might have to just grab them and be like, I'm sorry, you can't. And they might cry and scream at you, and then you have to just describe to them, I'm really sorry I just took your freedom there and controlled you. I don't want to control you, but in this case I needed to, and I want to explain why. If you ran across, you could have like died because these cars, you know, but most of the time, just let your kids listen to their soul, you know. So not to say it's easy to be a parent. I'm not saying that. It's one of the biggest challenges there is, like really. Um, but the school system certainly is not the place to raise a child. So, um, anyways, then she said, okay, I'll support you. But, you know, to learn to play piano, you're going to have to learn how to read because, like, you're going to have to take the train into town. This was in Switzerland. You're going to have to take, like, the bus from here to here and the train from here to here to get to your piano teacher's place. And you're going to have to learn how to read music. You're going to have to read road signs. You're going to have to know how to buy your bus ticket. You're going to have to learn how to read to be able to do all this because I can't just do all that for you. Like, this is important for you to take responsibility for. And her daughter's like, absolutely, I want to learn how to read. So she just went and started teaching herself too. Her mom didn't even teach her how to read.
Wow.
She just started getting books and like her whole passion, like she's just on fire. And she said, her mom told me she does not to this day know how she pulled this off, but within 3 months, she could read perfectly. 3 months, done. Now in school, this is drown out for potentially years because first of all, we're forced. Second, everyone learns in different ways too. There's many different learning styles. It's like, how can a teacher customize connection to 30 different kids? Imagine like as two parents having 30 kids. That's not very responsible. To
No.
have that many kids, how can you look after them all? But we do this, right? We give our kids away and then expect a teacher to somehow raise 30 children at once. So this is why, in a deep way, why we have cancer today.
Wow.
So I'm not saying if a kid goes to school, now they're going to develop cancer. I'm just saying we have to learn life skills and how to process our emotions as that's not taught in school. And there's a lot of damage in school. So it does actually increase the chance that we're going to develop cancer. And today the chance of cancer is 1 in 2 people. So this isn't like some kind of a joke. This really needs to be looked at seriously and this needs to change. So it's exciting to me to hear you say, you know, you've got did you say a 10-month old and
Yep. 10-month
you're
old.
already
Yep.
planning on home like natural learning?
Yeah. No, that's what we really want to do. And we kind of felt some resistance already from other people around us, like, what, you're not gonna put them in the school system? Like, no way. Like, nope,
Right.
not at all.
Well, there's a
Because yeah,
spiritual teaching. If you're heading 90 degrees from the pack, you're moving in the right direction.
that's what I've kind of learned a lot in my life. Because I'm about 30 years old. I've learned a lot, like with the health stuff. You know, I was going the same path as a lot of people, and then I started realizing, like, when I started looking into it, I was like, wow, like, why am I going this route? Like, eating all this processed garbage and stuff. um, with alcohol and marijuana, and just like I wasn't addressing like any of the stuff in my life, right? And then like I had to make those changes to really get to where I am today. And I'm so grateful I have. And that's exactly what I want to provide for my son, because you know,
Thank you for
like
doing that.
we haven't given him any vaccines. We haven't, put him into like the medical system at all. Um, like we just kind of like got out of the system as much as possible. That's really our main goal.
Why?
Um, because it's just the system is corrupt and backwards, and I guess
Mhm.
I would say even evil, to a
Yeah,
point. It's not doing anyone good. And I think a lot of like the main point of like what we've been talking about is like the victim mentality. Like, God's outside of us, the power is outside of us, the solutions is outside of us, everything's outside of us. The controls outside of us, but in all reality, everything's in our own power, because that's the way God created us, right? We all have that ability to create and the ability to change within ourselves and to go
absolutely.
inwards.
Yeah, yeah. And we're designed for change.
Mhm.
Like we're designed for new adventures, new experiences. We're designed for a journey, like going into the unknown, and it's our soul that is the guide. And that's you gotta give yourself freedom to be able to do the journey. So yeah,
Well,
it's a spiritual thing to choose freedom over safety when safety is destroying you. It's a spiritual thing to choose freedom then. Um, and love can be destroying us too, because just depends what what is our concept of love? What did we learn when we were a kid?
mm,
When we made a mistake, did our mother smack us across the head to punish us when we made mistakes? And then, that's love. Is that love?
no.
Probably not. So, yep.
Yeah, and I want to touch on one other thing, because like the whole system, right, is made in a way. Oh, actually, no. Well, actually, hold on. My thought was, it was a while back we talked about this, but really, like, how come, even though we're like the most advanced we've ever been, we have the most knowledge we've ever had, right? We're still in the spot where we have the highest rates of disease, obesity, addiction, right? And for like anyone out there is like, there's no way this is true, what Paul is saying. Like, I really want you guys to consider this. Like, if if like the things that we're doing with medical advancements, everything, are so powerful, how come we're in the spot? How come we have the most highest rates of disease, obesity, addiction, like cancer? Like 1 in 2 people, you said, are like have cancer or develop cancer, right? Like,
Yeah.
there has to be a reason for this. Like, what the things that we're doing right now in life, like the paths that we're going down with schooling, with the medical system, everything like that, like there has to be a reason why it's happening. And if we just keep doing what everyone else is doing, what society is telling us to do, we're going to get more of the same.
Mm, smart. Sounds smart to me. Right on. I mean, good freaking question. It's like a question that people don't like to ask sometimes or even consider. Um, there's many things to talk about with that question. We could do, I think what I want to I want my answer, I want it to be like a spiritual answer.
Okay, awesome.
So, um, there's a difference between like a human being has a heart
Mhm.
and other organs, but and then we have a brain and we have so there's a difference between being a spiritual person and being intelligent. You could be a highly, highly intelligent person, but not be a loving one. So you can have a very advanced brain, but a tiny little heart, metaphorically.
Yeah, right.
So I'll give you an example. And eh, there's, I remember hearing about this study done on I forget the woman's name, but there was a woman that lived with apes for like 30 years or something studying their behavior. And there was this example where a mother ape had gone out into the forest and found a tree, a fig tree, I think it was, a fruit tree of some kind, and it was like just loaded with fruit. So her and her infant ate the fruit. And then when they came back to the tribe of the other apes, they're like, they could see that she had a fig with her. And they're like, where did you get that? Like the apes are like, ooh, 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 ooh. Like whatever their language. But clearly, like, where did you get that? And then, you know what she did?
What?
She pointed in the wrong direction. She said, over there. So this is the difference between being intelligent and being a spiritual person. The capacity for the human race to actually be spiritual for real is low. The overall spiritual maturity of the human race is very, very low. So one of the most important things to understand about being a human is that you are a soul on this pretty wild planet called the Earth, and you are in a developmental process. There is such a thing as spiritual growth to reach higher levels of consciousness. It is possible to create a world where everyone's needs are fulfilled and we're all healthy and the air is clean and we know how to play and we play with each other and we don't cheat on each other's partners and we don't lie and steal from each other. It's possible to be overflowing. It's possible. But that requires spirituality. Intelligence won't get us there. It just won't. Intelligence can create an atom bomb. Intelligence can create a machine gun. It could create a vaccine designed for profit, which will knowingly harm people. But spirituality is what real human potential is about. But unfortunately, the human brain is so powerful that you can gain so much power from being intelligent. You can gain money, you can gain sex, that the free will choice to actually use that power and use our brain for the purposes of the greater good goes down, you know? So spirituality is what's required for this paradigm shift of cancer. Not a war. Like, I mean, and this is like all the wars in history, World War I, World War II, you know, but World War II is where they came up with chemotherapy. Like chemotherapy is mustard gas injected into a person's body. That's what they sprayed in World War, or was it World War I or World War II? It's like the first war in history where they flew over top with planes and just dropped gas down onto people. And what is the purpose of war? It's resources. It's because, like the Europeans, for example, overproduce their population, have way too many people, completely mismanage everything and be irresponsible, pollute their water, fish all the fish out of the rivers, run out of stuff because they don't know how to look after themselves in a responsible way, in a sustainable way. So then they just go to another country and say, we want your stuff because we can't look after ourselves. But we're intelligent and we have machine guns, so we're going to take your stuff anyways. So war, if you're going to war, it must mean you're not taking responsibility for yourself.
Wow, that's deep.
That's what spirituality is. It's a big deal, though. It's easier said than done.
Yeah, definitely.
That's the nature of free will. We have a choice. We listen to this or we listen to this.
And I feel like it starts with first addressing it in ourselves, right? And then teaching the future generations the same thing. Because if they just keep going
Absolutely.
through the school system and just the system in general, it's like it's not does the system doesn't end at the school, right? It goes through it just turns into the life system afterwards, and we're just all
Yeah,
part of the system, like another cog in the wheel. If if we can address that, then that's where we can actually make change, right? You first got to
yeah,
healing yourself, then you got to start helping other people. So I'm
absolutely.
I'm
Yeah,
super grateful and just amazed that you've I guess been able to come to this point where you're able to help other people, and just in awe of your greatness. And I know it's not just like, I know like other people, could have done the same thing, but no one else has. You are the one who's here, who has got this information and is sharing it with people now. So I just want to thank you like so much, just for learning this information, and just going out and like, once you were able to learn the information and help heal some people, you know going and help and teaching more people to do it, because I think it's really a needed thing in today's day and age, right? Like we need more of this. Like, this is how the world is going to change and become a better place. So like, it's amazing thing that you come to this, and you're sharing this now. And very grateful that you came on my podcast, like, to share this information, because it's just amazing.
likewise. I'm so grateful for you inviting me on, and I loved our conversation, and I thank you for all that you do and bringing more truth to people and helping make the connections. I really
Awesome.
appreciate that. Thanks for what you said. I thank you. Thanks a lot. I
Yeah,
appreciate it.
no problem. And so, question. So I know your cancer course is going now, starting now. When's the next one that comes up? If people want to become like a cancer coach or learn from you, do they have
Mhm.
to wait until like the next start, or like, is there, they can start now, or what's that?
Yeah, well, I mean, the course it's kind of late now for this course, but I hold cancer prevention coach one time a year for sure, or maybe twice, and then I hold my reversal coach training once a year. So the next time would probably be in August,
Mhm.
somewhere around there, about 6 months from now, if that's correct, if I just
Okay.
did the math quick. Um, yeah, and I've had naturopaths take my course now,
Mhm.
a doctor,
Mhm.
a few nurses, hypnotherapist, self-sabotage coaches,
Yeah.
stay-at-home moms, personal trainer, and like health practitioners of various kinds. So there's been several people that took it just to gain the knowledge,
Yeah.
you know? So it's a pretty wide range of people taking the course. Um, but yeah, it's good for everybody. The 15-step emotional healing process that I teach is extremely valuable. It's really it takes me 2 days to teach it all. Um, but yeah, it's worth it. So 6 months from now. Yeah, yeah. My
Awesome.
my website is wheeloflifeacademy.com.
And
And
then
my
you
book
also have
is
your
called
book on there as well, right?
yeah, my book is called The Root Cause of Cancer. And I have a new edition coming soon because my second book is almost ready too. And my second book, like it's gonna be ready in March, probably the end of March. But I I wrote my second book after 10 years of working with people with cancer, like living together with them for 3 weeks at a time. I don't think I even explained this earlier, but um, I lived with people with cancer for 3 weeks at a time, focusing on only the root cause of cancer and I did that for 10 years. And so I learned all the causes of cancer in different parts of the body, what causes testicular cancer, what causes lung cancer, breast cancer, and so on, without a doubt. And I teach this in my training, and I talk about this in my second book as well. But I also added some new things to my first book to make it just as helpful as it could be because I'm way wiser than I was when I originally wrote my first book. So at the end of March, I'll have a new edition of my first book and my second book will be out.
Awesome. Was your second book called What's in a Tear? Is that what I did I
Yeah,
see
the
that?
book series is called What's in a Tear, and
Okay.
there's a third book, but it's not ready yet. I actually wrote it a few years ago because I wrote it all together. And then after all these experience with people with cancer, I just completely changed my whole third book because now I understand things from a whole different perspective. So I had to just like change it. you know.
Well, I mean, that's good to keep always, evolving. Like we're never done learning. We're always never done, gaining more knowledge. So it's awesome that you're rewriting and making new revisions of it. I was actually going to be purchasing your book in just a couple of days because I wanted to read into that book. So that's awesome.
I think, yeah, you could order that book now. But if you want to wait until the end of March, I'll have my new edition out. We'll just have some new tweaks and
Okay.
improvements in it. So I maybe wait until,
Okay.
yeah, because it'll be a slightly improved version. So
Perfect.
I
Great.
thought I'd let you know since it's coming.
Yeah, that's end of March, you said? Perfect.
Yeah, around the end of March. If you're on my email list, like, so if anyone's listening, you want to subscribe to my email list, I send out testimonials of people reversing their cancer. Sometimes when I have time, I make helpful videos, and then I um always let people know when the next training is coming and like when book 2 will be available. So you could just subscribe on my email list on my website, wheeloflifeacademy.com.
Awesome. Yeah.
And my book can only be found on my website.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Taken out of the system. I love it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, Paul, yeah, definitely check out Paul's other videos. I think we were just talking before this, his terrain and oh man,
The train
terrain
theory
and germ
one.
theory. But
The germ theory. Yeah.
you got to get that back up because that's a great video for people to watch, I think.
Yeah,
Um,
I'll be putting it up soon. With the new website, I had to take some things down and like re-upload everything, and I've been kind of overwhelmed with so much stuff that, and my partner Aria, so we're getting there.
Awesome. Yeah, and I'll put your links down in the description below so everyone can find it easily. And I was checking out your website. It's an awesome website. So great job on that.
Good to hear. That's nice to hear.
Yep.
Thank you. Yeah.
Great. Well, yeah, everyone, please make sure to like, subscribe, put us a comment down below. Always happy to answer any questions you guys may have. And if Paul doesn't see it, I'll direct it his way so he can answer some questions for you guys. And once again, Paul, just so grateful for you to come on and share this information because I really truly believe that this will be able to change a lot of people's lives. So it was a great pleasure to speak to you today.
Thanks a lot, Tanner. It was a pleasure.
Thank you, Paul.